Welcome to with a little bit delay, welcome to the third round table. I'm in the position to moderate that, which seems quite a tricky thing. Anyway, we have something like 45 minutes, so it's very limited. And I can't talk to everybody, please, be volunteer for an answer, so to say, when you think you have something to contribute. It's not relevant how important it is, but if you think you should get rid of it, then please do it. I have not the opportunity to ask everybody. I would like to have, of these 45 minutes, actually 3 sections. The first one, according to the targets of today's meeting, is managing residual risks. We should be capable now to have a perception of what are residual risks and what to do in order to manage them. Then the second part, maybe a little bit longer, is industry needs and concerns. So what, from our industry viewpoint, what should be done, where to work on. And last but not least, since this event is organized by the Subspace Energy Hub, what could be specific projects that platform, the partners in that platform could work on in order to address certain topics which go along either with CO2 footprint reduction or with electrically propelled machines. These are the 3 things. We are all grown up, so whenever you think you have something to say, feel free. I mean, the audience, we are 1-to-1, so if it comes to ultimate battle fight, we are as strong as those who are sitting there. So don't be afraid to be good. I will try to moderate that discussion in a little bit provocative manner in order to stimulate also the discussion. The first thing is managing residual risks. After having listened to what the industry does with all these, let's say, damage prevention, mechanical, the pyramid of etc. So in some countries there is even clear what you are allowed to do and what you are not allowed to do. And when I hear on the other side, you do a lot of risk assessment, risk mitigation, you have a risk concept, and ultimately the client says, interesting, but I stick with the old technology. Then I say, why is all this risk discussion? Why these analyses and things like that? If we see on one side what the industry does, which is in my perception, I'm an engineer, quite up to what we do in other technologies which we use. And on the other side, the clients try to tackle that, to cope with that topics, their gut feelings, through risk analysis, and ultimately say, oh, sorry, we don't do it. These are 2 total different worlds. What can we do in order to bring these things together? Either we just go forward in the industry and say we do it, would that be approach? Or do we just hammer on the client representative to do it in a small tunnel where nobody pays attention to it? What could be a way forward that we act? Because I personally don't see a big necessity, because the industry has done a lot of things, we have a lot of knowledge, we even know what is allowed, what is not allowed. So why can't we make sure that these things, which is, in my opinion, mature technology, what can we do that this technology finds its way into use on our job sites? Provocative.
May I be precisely as provocative?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It's all recorded.
Hire a theologist and start missionarizing.
No, I mean, you represent the client.
Some of it, I think, is a communications challenge, and actually stuff like seeing objective risk assessment done on it is potentially really helpful. But in terms of driving the change, there have to be some pretty simple ways of doing it. Either someone will see a business angle, find a way that it's more cost effective to do something differently, and they will drive it, or people need to be pushed. And where we are in the project I was talking about is the client has made a decision to push and to say that the status quo, the way we would have done it before, is not acceptable because it won't meet the overall carbon target. So the client's position is not that they're telling anybody what they've got to do, but they are telling suppliers that they can't do what they used to do. They've got to do something different. And that's quite a big philosophical change because it opens up the thinking, I think.
But or on the other side, would we as an industry, would we get, so to say, would it be beneficial for us if firefighters say, here is the stamp, this is, or if you follow a certain procedure, for us, this is no an exceptional thing. If we know what you do in the tunnel, if you have certain procedures of training, etc., we can guarantee it's safe as it is now traditionally. Could the firefighters play such a role and support the development if the clients are rather reluctant? Shall we not? You wanted to add something again? But you could. Yeah, but you could give confidence to the client representatives that if certain procedures are followed, like training, etc., and what you have presented here, that you could say, under these conditions, the use of BEVs is absolutely feasible. It's in the range of what we normally deal with. That you could give confirmation and confidence to the client's representative that ultimately you can master the situation. That could, at least in my perception, that could be helpful. Okay, but please, you wanted to add something, sir?
Yeah, just a word. I, of course, believes that risk analysis is a really efficient tool in this. Otherwise, I would lose my job. So I have to say so. But I fully agree that we have to communicate both to the clients but also to the industry how to use this risk, because when you are talking residual risks, this is what it is all about. But you have to determine what the residual risks are, and you don't know what they are if you do not do the risk analysis. So.
I'm not, as an engineer, I also do risk research. It's not that I'm against that. What I say is, when it comes to that, and in this context, because we want to move things forward, when I listen to, and explicitly what you mentioned, that certain types of batteries have no problems, others are even forbidden, etc., that the risk analysis should not be, let's say, something on the client side. It should at least be to do the contractor side. It should be a joint endeavor. That because the contractor, through his processes, the people, the machinery he uses, he might have a combination of diesel. Explicitly, when we move from diesel to electric, then there will be a combination of diesel and electrically propelled, which brings another type of risk scenario, etc. So from my viewpoint, yes, but it should be that the contractor should be part of it. If it is sorry to say that, an academic or engineering exercise on the top level to justify, yes, you can allow the electric vehicle, that ultimately is not hit the target.
I think my point of view on this is that if you were looking at any other industry, you'd be designing to a standard, and that standard would therefore give you the authority to use that in that application. Mm-hmm. I think we've heard there's been a range of different approaches about. We're talking about just BEV. Mm-hmm. The battery can be any sort of battery in that context, and I think that's where the risk assessment comes in. You look at the worst, or you look at the best, or you look at anything else. Normally we would be designing a vehicle level, an OEM. You'd be saying, to use it in this application, I must pass these standards, and then you can do your residual risk assessment because you know whether that product has met those standards or not. And so there's some work there, I think.
Sorry, before I have to make in brackets a personal comment. What you now say is that what is in standard is the frozen knowledge of the last 70 years.
Correct.
So, and that is why I say, if you let the computer do that work based on that frozen knowledge, fine. He's ultimately smarter than we are. But what we face now, somebody also said, I think it was you, we are going into a new area of technology. We have a lot of challenges and there is no standard at all. So if we refer only to the standard of what we have been doing the last 70 years and which brought us here, that will not help us. So we need a joint spirit that we have to address these issues jointly.
Correct.
End of the bracket. But I would like to know from, yeah, please.
Yeah, I think that fits quite well into, we first need to see that our clients, our customers, have a completely different understanding of what the residual risk is than we who know how to use the technology. And for our customers, the technology as such is a residual risk. For us, it is the small little part which remains at the end of the risk analysis, and there is a big gap of communication which needs to be bridged. And when I recapitulate how we acquired our first projects, it was always a discussion around the convincing the customers by more or less physical facts, by facts, to go into this technology, and at the same time explaining the operational advantages which are there.
I would like to take that up because it's not the first time, and we have current examples of what does it mean if a new technology comes to a certain area. I know by personal experience that TBMs in Norway and Sweden, Norway explicitly Norway was a forerunner, then they abandoned it totally. They now reintroduce it. How does this work then? I mean, because if you go from diesel engines to BEV, it's, let's say, from an approach similar than going from drill and blast to a TBM. How do you handle it, and how do you see what could be lessons learned from that transition drill blast to TBM, which could be used when we go from diesel to BEV? Any experience from your side? Because you are facing that in. I also asked our employer, Swedish guy.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry.
How did you do that? Was it just ultimately the economic benefit, which convinced the client to say, I get something cheaper, therefore I go for it, even if I rather would like to drill and blast, or what ultimately made it?
I think the price was the key factor. Yeah.
The money.
Okay.
And,
yeah, please continue.
And it's like we discussed earlier, that everybody bought their own and had their backyard, the TVMs. And then they got cost so much, so they have to sell it away, drill and blast instead.
Because if you tell me that, then because I have been a little bit hammering on the clients and what they do and things like that, because that brings me back to what is then the role, or what could be the role of the industry. Ross, in one of your earliest slides, you showed it is BEV is the thing to do. It is CO2 footprint, all these kinds which you can't monitorize, but there is less ventilation, there is less, let's say, health issues, there is, I don't know what. For Christ's sake, why do not use it? Why don't you use BEVs since years? If it's overall more economical than diesel, can you tell me? Why not? Why is it such a hassle now in convincing things? If, according to you, that's just benefits. There is no downside. It's just these stupid clients who say no BBs. That's the only reason why. Because the rest, it's economical. It's more advantage. You have less health problems, less gas in it. You have I don't know what. So tell me why there are not BBs already on the job sites. Why not?
They are more expensive in investment cost, and the investment cost end up on a different account than
that
the
is
operation cost.
That is what he just explained. I remember times when the contractors had their own TBM in their backyard. So whenever there was a TBM project, they say, okay, I bring my TBM along. No contractor worldwide owns a TBM anymore. So why is a BVE truck something that you do not just rent for your job for an easy price? And you have competitors, and so. That. You are a contractor representing? Who else is a poor guy? Who else is a poor guy?
Yeah, we tried. It doesn't measure up. It's too lousy to be driving around in tunnels. We have to have asphalt to drive over.
I'm just wondering. Yeah. I mean, maybe your slide is wrong, Ross. Maybe you just skipped the disadvantages and have no clue.
It's a very prejudiced. I'm just looking in the room. I'm thinking two big elephants, right? And one one's got like a dollar sign on its head, and the other one's got a fire sign on its head. For me, these are the two topics. These are the things that are set to us as arguments, and I think the financial ones are quite easily managed through rental models and other things like that. The fire one, I think, is the reason why we're here. And I was thinking back to you, Søren, with your study, you're probably of one of the few companies now that have actually invested a lot of time in doing risk assessment of BEVs, right, for a very active project. And I wonder whether there was anything you and your team were left thinking about having done the project. Were there things that you weren't quite satisfied with, but you ran with it, right, as assumptions or something? Was there something there that really, that we should really think about? Or do you feel quite satisfied with the outcome, and that there weren't any question marks?
But I think, and this is also what you mentioned, I think it is risk perception. It is simply the sheer fact that when people hear BEVs, they think, oh, there will be a fire and we are not able to extinguish this fire. So without setting it into other relations, you maybe kill more people by having such a BEV than having a diesel. So this sheer fact you have to deal with.
Let's say, we have been discussing during lunch. I mean, the main risk of having casualties or people hurt on the job site is not because of a fire, being it BEV or diesel. It is that they are run over by a vehicle. I think that is much bigger that nobody.
But that's what I mean by risk perception.
Yeah.
But in your mind, you hear one thing. You hear that a lot of people may be killed by a fire accident, but you take not into account all the other types of risks.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but then the question is that don't come back to you. But what could all the stakeholders, which maybe are not in the center of the construction industry, in this specific case, firefighters or safety, early emergency rescuers and things like that, what could they contribute and do? Should we not take them in and say, okay, we do a risk assessment, and ultimately we have, let's say, a executive summary of the firefighters saying if this and this and this is, then it is, because we need to convince. Otherwise, it's. I mean, even if there is a economic benefit, which is according to us enormous. We can't do it if the client just says, sorry, no BEVs on my job sites. So we need to find an entry into that. And the question is good, because we depend ultimately on the goodwill of the client to be ready to go into innovation, which is in. Yeah, please. Yeah.
I think this BEVs needs one pager where these two elephants are explained. The one elephant with the dollar sign. It's one needs to make the calculation not only of the investment costs, but the investment and what is he gaining on the ventilation costs. I think that's the price tag, and not only the investment. And the second elephant was the fire. There should be explained that lithium-ion accumulators are not lithium-ion accumulators. That's there a difference. And with that, the fire or the extinguishing behavior changes a lot. And that, in my opinion, that needs to be explained to the people on a one-pager. And also the advantages one can gain on the pollution side, on the health side. Yeah.
This brings me to the second part of this roundtable, which is, according to the program, what are the industry needs and concerns? I understand such an industry paper, whatever industry means, stakeholder papers you may call it, could be helpful, that these two elephants in the room are addressed. This is something I understand, but we can discuss it briefly. Who should do that? And in what way could this be done in order to build up certain confidence, because different stakeholders, which ultimately means it is not a specific one view perception of the situation, could be helpful. That is something I understand. Who could contribute?
I think it's quite compelling that if you just listen to the language we're using, we haven't talked much about the technicalities of of what we're doing. We've talked about perception and communication and how to engage people and how to explain. And all of that stuff is definitely somewhere we can focus. But I think what often happens is we sort of work individually in our own little areas. And if you want to change the world, you need to start a movement sort of thing. And I think there is probably a lot of value in the kind of the range of organisations and people represented here, having some sort of coordinated voice, maybe.
To gain the momentum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we come from different parts of the industry. You represent the client. We have the firefighters here. We have, let's say, more on the civil engineer. We have the supplier. We come from different countries with a different background. We are dealing with different projects. Us, as representing our organizations, could say we work on that, and we say yes, we have such a 1 or 2 pager describing based on this. Or should we reach out to, I don't know if there is certainly as International Association of Firefighters, I think it's something like that. They have even maybe a working group dealing with underground fires. Should we go individually and say, should we talk to them and try to integrate them so that ultimately it is a paper which is backed up by different organizations, or SUVA is an insurer here in Switzerland. You certainly represent the common state of the art in the insurance companies, I assume. You certainly look over the edge of Switzerland. So if we see that there is a potential for such a paper in order to act as a kind of icebreaker, how can we get such a paper? My personal experience is that it is very difficult to activate somebody to write something. It's I know personally how it is. If somebody asks me to write something, then it takes time. But anyway, if we, as a conclusion of this event, say the Subspace Energy Hub tries to summarize and describe state of the art based on what we have been discussing, and say, look, you can use that from the subs, and you can go to your client, or you can go to, I don't know, the Danish Underground Society or whatever, and say, look, there was a round table, these persons were present, they have created a 1 or 2 pager, and that is represent. Is this something of interest? Are you interested to hear more about that? Is this feasible? Is this helpful? Maybe that you as a client think if the Stockholm firefighters are integrated and have an exchange maybe with you, that you can allow certain things. Would such a status paper as a kind of summary of what we have been discussing, referring to the different aspects, would that be helpful? Or is this just that you have something and there is based on that I would be ready to spread that? Would that be helpful?
I think very much. And I also would recommend to add to this paper also the related experience from mining, because this is also underground, and there the BEVs are more or less standard today. I think you can support that. And our experience is also that we, in the second project which we did in Austria, already the recommendations from SUVA were a great help in arguing safety of these systems, including all the discussions which the construction site had with the firefighters in Austria and the Arbeitsinspektorat, etc.
Other statement very positive, but I do not know in what, let's say, ecosystem or in what type of network you are acting. But if you obviously you volunteer to be here, which is not just around the corner, you showed some engagement, and therefore, for you, yeah, it's just the other side of the valley, but you are exceptional. There are gentlemen who have been traveling much. But would that be helpful in the context you are active? That if you have such a paper, or not? I mean, if you say it's all bullshit, then it's okay.
From my point of view, it's that for many years they are planning the big projects, and then we get the drawings and everything, and the safety concept in fire protection. We get everything handled. Here you go. And me as a contractor comes back and say, oh, we want to use this. They already had sent home the guy who did this. Left for 4 years ago. So the consult that made the fire planning isn't in the client's office. So I have no one to turn to. I have to take discussion with that's a real problem. So we can put in electric cars, absolutely.
But the thing is, you as a contractor, you're a main actor on the construction side.
Absolutely.
So therefore, if you say, look, I would like to revise what has been, I have a better idea, I have a smarter idea.
Follow the contract. Okay.
That
We
is,
will not pay. Follow the contract.
well, that's a financial aspect.
Yeah.
Let's say that I say when it comes to financial, the industry should be smart enough to do that. I'm
So
rather.
the discussion should be before.
But exactly, you're right, because we not only have one, let's say, target customer as the contractors, but there is also some informative communication work needed for the planning step ahead of the contractors. Yeah, where all the construction site planning is done, and I think this is what you refer to. But the hysteresis, the latency in between this communication, realizing it, and getting it into some tender documents or something like that is years.
That's clear. I'm long enough in the business. I agree, but I take up what you said. We are facing a time of change. And we have to act. I think it was you who talked about the UK Highway Authority, what plans they have. We do not talk of the next century, we do not talk of the next 50 years, we talk of the next 15 years or maybe 20 years. So if we keep on saying we need that time, I'm pretty sure that the public pressure will on the construction industry will grow. Explicitly what you showed, that the CO2 footprint of the cars, of the users gets smaller. That means the CO2 footprint on the construction will so if we as an industry are not ready to say we go into that investment because it takes anyway years and I will go on the retirement early, so it's not my business, then we are missing our opportunity. We have to. It's a must for our industry. We just have been discussing BEVs, and there are a lot of other things like CO2 poor cement, recycled steel, everything will be touched. And if everything lasts that long, then we are in serious problems. So we have to start with somewhere. And if you say we have a kind of 1 or 2 pager as a conclusion of that certainly is a starting point. Because I have to watch the time. This is, let's say, something we more or less enthusiastically agree to, that such a 1 or 2 pager could be helpful. But I want to get more personal, sorry to say. You all have participated here. And the thing is, what would you do, because you have been the first time in such a constellation, I assume, or I don't know. Oh, you're permanently in there, I understand. What would you do as a kind of specific project with the focus you are working on? What would you do in that context? PV, or let's say not finding its way into underground and mining industry. What would you do from your viewpoint, say, if this is done, if this is as a kind of project or report or research, or I don't know what, that you say, if this is taken, then this could be the biggest contribution from my domain, that these electrically propelled vehicles find their way into job sites, respecting all the regulations, etc., existing or not existing. What would you do? I start with 10, and at 0 I start with you, so we have a couple of seconds to reflect. But just as a kind of, because we want to go into action, we all agree to that message. We should be active, not just talkative. We should walk the talk. So therefore, that's very spontaneous, in a creative manner, what could you think would be an issue you would work on to say that brings, from my viewpoint, where I have an influence, that would make sense in order to add to this push of that topic? What could you? Shall we start at the edge, or is fasting?
I have the simple thought. I can give these informations to our social partners. That's what I will do nowadays.
Yeah. Have you contact to non-Swiss insurance companies similar active like you?
Yeah, there is a Dachgruppe so the German-speaking colleagues. And there is also an international organization.
Could you then take what we have been discussing into that forum?
Yeah, I will.
That you said that. Okay.
So if ever an information is there a two-pager or what that will be communicated? Yes.
Okay. You have acted as an icebreaker. Who is following? Who is smart?
I want to know why the clients aren't just ordering them.
From a client point of view, what I don't want to do is tell the contractor how to do his job. But what I can do as a client is communicate what's important to me. So, I said earlier, actually, I might be neutral on BEVs, but I'm not neutral on carbon. I know I want to pull the carbon right down. So I can do things through procurement to incentivize that, to encourage that, to try not to put the contractor in the position where he's got no choice but to do what he was doing before. So I think that focus, it's sort of unexciting to talk about the world of commercial procurement and so on. But actually, I think that's a fundamental step. So communicating clearly what the big target is, which is get carbon down, and then using procurement and commercial mechanisms to create an environment where the contractor can actually do something meaningful.
Sorry, as I said, we again provocative. Don't you think that you set the frame too limited? Because if the design is rubbish from a, let's say, sustainable blah 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 viewpoint, then the contractor, you can give as many incentives as there are.
You can write a contract that gives that much freedom or that much freedom.
Yeah,
the first thing you have to do is think about it. Think consciously about, are you giving your contractor the right opportunities to use their skills? And are you telling them what you value? And if you do those things within the contract, you're then paving the way for the contractor to respond.
Would you be? Do you think it would be reasonable and helpful if the clients would be ready to go? If the clients were ready to go into other type of contracts, saying, "Look, we are ready to maybe modify or accept different designs if there is a benefit in it. We are ready to go into certain also economic risk if the solution maybe doesn't last 100 years, maybe just 50 years, because we need to build up expertise, etc., etc."
Obviously, there's as many different contracts as there are different projects, but certainly, if you have the right mindset, you can set out to open the door wider. And that's what we've tried to do with the job I was talking about earlier. We don't claim that we know what the answer is. We don't know what methods are going to be used and so on. But we're trying to provide the space and say where we want to get to in the end. And we have actually altered our contract model to do that, and we've put incentivizations in that we wouldn't have dreamt of putting in 5 years ago. So we are moving.
Why do I ask? Then the other gentlemen have the opportunity they have now had sufficient time to reflect, because I have been in contract in discussions with operators, railway operators, about new, let's say, on how to do certain things in order to better tackle or cope with these challenges. And my proposal was, you should, as a client, you should not ask for a specific service or for a specific deliverable according to bill of quantities and incentivize it. You should actually look for a team from A to Z, which gives you the best potential that you get new innovative solutions. If you just think in phase-wise silos, you will never get that.
We've tried to focus on describing what we call the outcomes. Mm-hmm. So I'm not trying to construct a tunnel that's 16 metres diameter across the Thames. What I'm trying to do is make the road network function, because currently we don't have free-flowing traffic across the river. We have pollution, congestion. The outcomes I'm looking for are to get rid of those problems, relieve the congestion, get the free flow and so on. it's not a particular answer. If the contractor comes back with some different looking solution, but gives me confidence it will achieve that outcome, then that's fine, and that's the way we've tried to write the contracts. But I say every project is different, and that's not always the way it's done.
Okay. Anybody else? I still on with it. Yeah, please.
I like the idea of this two-pager very much. If we can achieve the goal of being able to communicate facts from as many different sources as possible, then we get a bigger chance to succeed also with customers.
I fully agree. The only disadvantage, or what is not so nice, is that the work is on our side and not on yours.
I mean,
I wanted to say that you also get in one way or another to do something. Sorry.
I can volunteer in participating in editing. This is not a problem.
It's just trying to tease you or to stimulate you. That is it's a unique situation, and that brought me to the idea, could we not? What do you think of that? But maybe I'm a little too pushy and too pulley, and we start to digest anyway, but...
maybe also one thing, I'm just my point of view, but also the fear of changing to BEVs, or maybe the respect of it, is also that there's no blueprint or whatsoever in how to change into a CO2 neutral construction site, be it underground or above ground, and also how to operate it properly. And I think this is also maybe something which could, Subspace Energy Hub as a physical space could help, because you are in the transition into becoming CO2 neutral, and we could showcase how we're going to do it, and that it's profitable and that it's doable, and also how to operate it in the long term. And I think a lot of new business cases or service cases could evolve from this transition, and this could also be showcased in order to give it to the customer and give them a choice on how to do it, So we have new service models.
That brings me to because you showed what you do with Normet, where you have also training, etc., and you showed I think it was green spots on the global map. You are quite active. From that viewpoint, because you seem to be a forerunner, I assume it's most mining sites, Most of them. What would be, from your viewpoint, what could be done that BEVs also get into the tunnel industry, as obviously as successful as they are in mining? What type of actions did you do? We could do either individually or jointly in order to support this implementation of these new technologies.
Yeah, again, mining and tunneling is different, and why it is accepted in mining is because, or more accepted in mining is because they see the real benefit out of it. Let's say, for example, ramp speed. That's not an issue in tunneling, because you can drive whatever 20 kilometers an hour. But in a mine with a long ramp, it really, let's say, the BEVs actually outperform the diesel machines. So they see the benefit there, and ventilation and heat and all that. In tunneling, it is different. Let's say they don't drive these big distances, so it's more, let's say, challenging to show where, let's say, what they can save. But I think important is that we probably are getting more engaged or involved with the discussion with the designers, as you probably said, kind of before actually the whole design is done, and you just get it on your desk, and that's what you have to do, more or less, what you have to deliver. Talk to these before and explain, where are the benefits, so it gets into design earlier, which probably we have to do more, or actually start doing that. I think one of the learnings for Normet was that we had these great machines and latest technology, safest chemistry, and we delivered the first machines to the customers. Then actually it was kind of, whoa, okay, firefighters, okay, what are we going to do when whatever happens? And then a lot of parties get involved, and we learn our lessons, yes. We invested quite a lot, now having 70 specialists trained around the globe. But I think it is really important that we with the, or as said, before the delivery, we are already in a good exchange with the customer, and then when the machine is delivered, actually we work out these cases, what happens if, etc. So how to, let's say, minimize animal thinking. Actually, we should hire firefighters. Kind of to better understand, like what happens, what actually happens, how in that case firefighters think of, okay, somebody was mentioning today. The firefighters, they only get 250 meters into the tunnel because that's the length of the hose, right? So, what can we do to, or let's technically on the equipment, or as you propose this connection to flush or to cool down the batteries, these kind of things, I think we should more address that more directly with the customers.
Okay,
sorry.
That's okay.
That was too long.
No, what I want to say, and let's say me personally, but also the other partners in the subspace energy hub, when you come across smart ideas when you're on the way back, feel free to communicate that, because it's a challenge for all of us. We have to gain speed in this topic and the other topics. Just one conclusion remark before we close, because we have to watch the clock. What is interesting is when we discuss underground applications of BEVs, etc., we refer to the mining. In mining, it's different. There is one client, it's nobody has talked that underground construction, explicitly in urban areas, has a totally different environment than a mine. We have hundreds of people around us who could be activated if we tell them, look, BEVs, there is less fumes, there is less exhaust, they are, according to your slide, they are less noisy, etc., etc. We're giving you, living around this job site, we're giving you a better, what I would like to trigger with that is, mining is fine, but it's never underground construction, it's different. But underground construction has pain points which could be activated in order to facilitate such new technology, because according to you there are a lot of advantages which also the surrounding conditions are beneficial. And if we could convince, for instance, normally job sites underground are 24/7, if we could say we can work longer because we have less decibel and less noise, we have no ventilation, blah 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 blah, that could be a benefit which the client side is more than happy to welcome, because it shows that he takes care of the people around the construction site. And I would like to conclude my third roundtable with that, because that is something we should think of. This is our industry, it's not mining industry. We have no mine representative here. And all of it, even if you have ultimately just to make that the traffic flows, we have people around us, we have a community around us, explicitly in urban areas, Stockholm, where if we could show what BEV benefit would be to the people around for years, and would do a little bit of propaganda and promotion, I'm not so sure if a client would resist if people around said we rather would have electric vehicles than these noisy, stinky diesels. Can't you do anything else? I wonder how a public administrative officer would react to that. With that, I would like to conclude. Thank you all of that. It has been interesting. We have been capable to create an idea, and if you think that you have a smart idea which would be worthwhile to take up, please feel free to get in touch with us, that we can help you to pursue that idea. Thank you very much, and I wish all of you good and safe travel back home, wherever you come from. Okay, thanks a lot.